Hi guys, how are we doing? Hope you're all well. It's been a couple of weeks since I posted a video. Obviously we've just released another couple of songs, went onto Bandcamp as a purely digital release. Thanks for those who've had a listen. Get there, Elliot-Williams.bandcamp.com. That's where you can have a listen to the two tracks. They're songs which feature Emma on vocals. She's written the words, dealt with that side of it. I've done all the music. And Wandering the Nights, still out there doing good work. Thought I'd do something a little bit different today, and for this video, and for over the next few weeks and months, we'll sort of delve into this kind of thing. Because what happened, I sort of got thinking back to music, and to music that's has influenced me, that I grew up with. And it all came about with I was listening to the radio, and it's a bit it wasn't Desert Island Discs, but it was something like that. And there was a guy on there talking. It wasn't someone I knew particularly, but he was talking about his albums and mentioned an album. And I said, "Oh God, I remember when that came out." And it got me sort of back to thinking, and I started going, "Well, wow, what was the first albums that I bought?" And I'll show you. So I thought I've gone in. This is just so well. We're at part. This is sort of part one of this little tale, because I've sort of separated out a couple of sort of 2-3 lists, and because I was again really thinking about stuff, and it's a lot of it comes with starting getting back and writing songs and things and music and stuff, and stop hearing actually what I've written, and you sort of go, you start to hear some of these influences, and you also hear things that, you know, where's that thing, sort of that idea come from? Why do I like certain sounds? Was this, that, the other? And so I separated up these sort of 3 lists, and one is like, what are the sort of early things that I listened to, I went and bought myself. Then there's a sort of set of albums, and there's musicians and bands that were, I need to listen to this because it's going to help my development, or I need to hear this player, and that sort of thing. And then there's the sort of the third thing, which is, as I got older, your taste change, or you hear different things, or people introduce you to different bands. So, and there's a lot of albums, a lot of bands in there, and sort of there's notable, there'll be notable absences from it. There's bands that you sort of forget about that you heard. But sort of to go into this sort of this early list, and I've got them. Where are they? I've got them up here on a. I've written. I haven't sort of write it all down. So this early influences, and the real starter, because this is the first album, and generally this is it. This is the actual vinyl. And I've had to sort of double check. So this came out in '87, and I went with my uncle to Birmingham to the music shops and bought a pair of trousers, which my mum and dad didn't appreciate or didn't get, and I don't think I particularly got. But I'd been let loose with some Christmas money, and then I came back with this pair of trousers. I'm not sure I ever actually wore them out. Sorry, Uncle, but we were let off the reins. And I bought this album. Now I can't remember whether it was from the Virgin Megastore or the HMV one, but this, and obviously at the time it was a big album. And I was sort of going back to it, and you know what? It's the song, The Way You Make Me Feel. Well, take back to '87, that's when I started learning to play drums and all that sort of thing. But the feel on that song, although it's a mix of drum machines and John J.R. Robinson, all sorts of build up to make the production of it. And I didn't know that at the time. So later you find this sort of stuff, really sort of get to understand what's going on. So, but I've always loved the feel of that song, and it is actually a song that goes, it's on my drums playlist on Spotify. So if I'm sitting down to practice something, I'd love to have a sort of a play along to that and augment what was going on with it. So I'm not going to dilly-dally around too much, right? So that was the first album I bought, which wasn't long followed by the next, which one would it have been? One or two by the same artists. As we started playing, some of the coffee as well. As I started playing drums, we got our first band together and we've done that. And that's when you start sort of talking to, other musicians, your mates, and we start, oh, you want to try this? And we were getting this band sort of getting together to have a jam, and I remember my friend Dave Wall, Big Dave Wall as we know, because there was little Dave Wall and Big Dave Wall at school. And Big Dave Wall, he played bass and guitar and wheel starts, and he gave me this cassette and he said, listen to this. And it was the Cult. It was the Cult Electric. And I'd never heard of them, never seen them, I hadn't seen them on Top of the Pops or anything like that at the time. And I just remember being blown away by it. And because of the drums are really forefront of the mix, and it was just, and from that day until now, I am a massive, massive fan of the Cult. I've seen them many, many times. Maybe don't listen to them so much these days, but I do keep track of them. I always have listened to new albums. In fact, I think it's probably only the last album which I didn't buy because I've been just streaming on Spotify because it was easier. But it was in 1988. I'm just going to check myself on that. But yes, this album came out. So I'd been given a copy of the Electric album, and then this came out. So, and I was in Germany on the German exchange program actually from school, and this came out in Germany before it came out in this country, and I bought this there, and I was just so chuffed because I got back and it wasn't even out in this country, and I was like, I was about 2 months ahead of the game. In fact, you can see, because I had to fit it into my bag, and it's got all the creases in the cover from where it's got, but I played this record, I said the phrase, I played it to death. It still plays, and it really was a sort of a landmark album. But it was then quickly followed by The Cult Love, which in my opinion is the best album that they've probably ever done, and it introduced me to the drumming of Mark Brzezicki. And it was not just, it was The Cult, and there's some great songs on there that timeless. They play so many of them still to this day. But as a drummer, there was just this thing going on. There was just something else that was going on in the drumming that made something really special out of it. And the Cult, and it didn't really just get right in there. And that, that's from being a kid. But also around the same time, I encountered, and this is because of someone else said, oh yeah, you got to listen to this, was these gentlemen and this album. And this introduced me to the drumming of Nico McBrain. And again, as a drummer, he had such a profound effect on my playing. And I hear myself, there's things I do now and I just go, wow, I'm not sure that's me that's doing that, or I've just channeled Nico. And if people don't know that how big fan of Iron Maiden I am, and better in a weird way, I was a massive fan of Iron Maiden. Kind of didn't listen to them for a long time, so the journey I went on with music. And at one point I had all of their albums, all the 12-inch singles, all this stuff, and I'd never ever seen them play as a band. Never seen the band play. And I got to fulfil that over on the Book of Souls tour. It's not so long back, and then saw him again. I saw him twice on 2 tours, and saw him on the Legacy of the Beast tour. So to actually see the band play, I'd seen Nico play at Drum Clinic years and years and years ago. I'd you know, played a couple of drum clinics, and that was amazing. But you know, to see them up there with the band playing those songs, particularly Legacy of the Beach, because they played some of the songs that I would try to learn to play as a drummer. And it's weird is that I go back now and say, I think I can actually play that. Instead of being, I don't know, maybe I was probably 12 or 13 and not being playing that long and trying to play something like Caught Somewhere in Time. Had a go. Now, and this is not to miss out, there's some bands that are influences. Good, one of my best friends, he introduced me to the band Cream, so that's Duncan, and my other best mate, Nick. I mean, we all go back, we first started, part of our first band, and he sort of introduced me to John Bonham and Led Zeppelin. And with those, you know, that was them introducing me to those bands. I didn't go out and buy those albums, so it's a little bit different than what these other ones. They're things that I'd gone and bought. And he put together, as a drummer for me then, John Bonham, Ginger Baker, Nico McBrain, Mark Brzezicki, Mickey Curry, who plays on Sonic Temple album, and you've got the core of where I started as a drummer. And interestingly, when I look back at it, I go, they're all drummers that actually define very much in rock, but their influence and their styles, for me, really see where I kind of went to, because I started getting interested. Who were they listening to? Who were they copying? When you start talking about Ginger Baker and John Bonham, you're then going the next step back into the big band drummers. And that opened up a whole different thing for me, particularly in the sort of mid to late 90s, when I understood so much more about music. But so at this point, so we're going late 80s, early 90s, and the other two albums I'm going to bring as I show from this early point is U2 released this album, Act On Baby, and I think it's fabulous. Love this album, really, really love this album. And it was, they were trying to play a kind of feel that was going on that was then at this point that I was trying to get with hearing sort of funky stuff, things that groove, and it all coincided. There's stuff they're trying to do on there which is like, oh yeah, okay. It really got with that, and massively influential. Love that album. I think it's their best album, and it's where they became really like U2, unlike any other band, for me anyway. And a similar-ish sort of time, this album and this band, hopefully you can see it, the Spin Doctors. And again, there's a little group of us that we sort of discovered this band all at the same time, and they were a real modern take on lots of things that we're into. Certainly for their big commercial success, their first actual sort of release, I think in this country, which was Home Belly Groove, which is a live album, and it showed they were a jam band, and they're improvised, and they, you know, went on journeys, and that really fitted what I was kind of coming from with Cream, Led Zeppelin and that sort of stuff, where improvisation and just letting the moment happen, that was a sort of a big key thing, a very big key thing for me as a drummer. That's really what I've always sought out and loved in music, coming from the drum side of things. Years later, as I've come in from a different thing, composing, and then now with playing piano and writing and things, I sit and I improvise and I do that, but I like in my songs, I try and really work it out, so it's like, right, yes, I know exactly what's going on. So a little note, so we're going to just refer to my list, because this is the notables and the early influences that for me in my musical journey, and we're going back to sort of Queen, The Cult, Iron Maiden, Sky. I remember finding one of their albums in my parents' record collection, and sitting there, and it's got Toccata in, I think what the full title is, and just being mesmerised. Probably about like an 8 or 9, 10 years old or something, and it was a real odd one. That, and there was a Santana album in my parents' record collection, which I found and being slightly just peculiar to the rest of the records that they had. I will note to my mum, and a doff cap to my mum, is that she was a big Beatles fan, and I remember listening to the Beatles quite a lot, but for me it was always the Stones. Sorry mum. So we go Sky, Fleetwood Mac, wonderful band. Little bit after this with me with Fleetwood Mac, after this sort of era. Cream, Led Zeppelin. Another one, I never bought any of his albums back at the time, but it was always around. I remember seeing the Docklands concert on the telly. You couldn't sort of escape his music, it was there, and all along through my life his music keeps cropping up. And now with sort of with Spotify and YouTube and things like that, being able to listen to a lot more and just get a little bit more, even more into it, but he's always been there. There's Jean-Michel Jarre. Possibly a little bit of a curveball if you've seen me in other musical senses, so he's a drummer. But yeah, the man, I think his music's there. It's Oxygen, obviously part 4, which is the really famous one, but it was back at school. We had music lessons. There was a DX7 and drum machines, and people were learning to play keyboards, and they'd just sit down and they would want to, people would try and play this stuff, but it was just, it was really, really there. I think it's hard to explain probably how big an artist he was in our childhoods and around my people my sort of my age. Another one, and this I don't know whether it's been a curveball, but since I remember seeing The Cure in Orange on the BBC, and I used to later find out actually what they're showing on the telly then was only half of the concert. I've since got the full brand new copy of the VHS. I've played it once because I wanted to watch, just to sit down and do it, but I've got that, and I love The Cure. I love The Cure. Explore so many different avenues and alleyways. That's always just been a thing for me. It's not really so much shared with it, particularly with anybody else, but really all the way through. Whatever the kind of whatever they've done, right up to their latter stuff, which maybe not so commercially famous, but still equally relevant. And the final one I'll put on there, well, there's final 2 really. Put this one in there and leave with the other one's a bombshell. Kiss. Love them. Again, just, they were kind of a band that were just around and about. Probably didn't buy many, never bought many Kiss albums, but just remember one of the first-ish concerts everyone see was Kiss in about probably 1990, 91. The Revenge album, and I've since then seen Kiss. So that was without makeup, and I've since seen them with makeup. Amazing, well worth seeing. Recommend to anybody. Oh, just remembered one as well, which was again, this was something I found, and I can't show you this one because I bought the first album I bought by this band. I bought in Edinburgh on holiday with my parents, and that was The Ghost of Cain by New Model Army, and not really anything I ever shared with anybody. However, I did meet someone when a few years later lent them the New Model Army albums because they were really into them as well, and I've never seen them since. 3 or 4 albums, and The Ghost of Cain was one of them, was in there. Obviously since then I have, obviously Spotify, I can go back in and there, it's all there, and I've got some of them on CD, but had an original cassette of The Ghost of Cain, bought in Edinburgh while on holiday. Amazing band, love them, you know, great songs, stories, and great music. And I'll leave you, and the first, this is just, I don't have this single anymore because I gave it to someone back in the late 80s, but the first single I ever bought, which was I Owe You Nothing by Bros, and at the time I had not long started playing the drums, and there's this band, forget the old idea that they were these, you know, whatever they were, TV bopping, crazed thing. But he was on top of the pops with a double bass drum kit, something like Billy Cobham or Simon Phillips would be seen with. And there he is, right on there, primetime TV, and it was just like, these guys are going to be amazing. Look at this drum kit. And then you find out, you know, when you learn stuff, you know, it's not in playing it as much to the annoyance of Luke Goss. All programmed, you know, it's what he wanted. He wanted it out there to play, and then doesn't. But it was the first 7-inch single that I ever bought. Right, there you go. It's a little insight to where I've started and come from. More of these to come as time goes on. Okay, take it easy.